Welcome back to Daybreak USA. Here's Angie Austin.
Yes, it is Angie with Daybreak USA. Welcome back, my friend. We are going to learn about the 7 rings. It's a journey to a balanced life of peace, passion, and purpose. Brian Watson joined us yesterday with a little bit of his pretty much rags to riches story, and then rags to riches again after he lost everything in '08. And Brian, today you are going to talk about your book, The 7 Rings, and kind of break down the 7 rings for us, which will hopefully help us have a balanced life of peace, passion, and purpose. Welcome back, Brian.
Thanks for having me on your show again, Angie. I appreciate it.
You betcha. Well, I've watched you in action, and I love so much that, obviously, I know you're very successful, but I love it that you treat people so well when you come into contact with people, and that also you give so much back to the community. So let's break down these rings. So you said the business is your 7th ring, which is kind of shocking. So what's number 1?
Well, I asked the question in the book, and I wrote this book, as I said yesterday, for this idea of encouraging people, and 100% of the proceeds are donated away. And so I asked the question, what is at the center of your life? What drives you? What is your foundation? And for me, over the years, I've put God in the center of my life. Now, you may put other things in the center of your life, and you may define God in different ways. But for me, it's this idea that there's a permanence and a foundation. And a lot of people put their kids at the center of their life, or exercise, or whatever it is, and they realize that those things can be changing or fleeting over time and may not be fulfilling. And you're having God as a foundation, then it emanates out to the other rings in my life.
So God is number 1, and then I'm assuming your wife number 2?
You're absolutely right. And so my relationship with my wife is the 2nd ring. And again, a lot of people will put kids in the center of their life. And after 20 years of running kids around a soccer practice and having the sun rise and set on them, sometimes couples don't know or like each other anymore because they haven't been focusing on their relationship. The kids are very important to us, and they're a welcome addition to our relationship, but they are not the sole purpose of our relationship. So at the center is God. The 2nd ring is a relationship with my wife. The 3rd ring is a relationship with our children, and we can love and serve them best as parents when we have a solid relationship and we're healthy as individuals as well.
I love that. It's just the priority is so clear, because I'll never forget one of my friends that I admire very much lost his son Quentin when he was 9, and he's told me on several occasions during interviews about Quentin, Angie, you have another chance to put your kids higher up in terms of priority. You have another chance to focus on them. He said, I don't, and I put my career first, and I didn't spend the time with Quentin that I would have liked to have spent with him. So put down the iPad, put down your cell phone. When the kids walk in the room, look them in the eye, and I do. So, okay, number 1, God, number 2, wife, number 3, kids, and then people are still thinking business will be next. No, it's not, even though you're wildly successful. So what's number 4?
It's this idea of expanding your definition of your community. We all have a community. Sometimes we define that just by, maybe our extended family or the people we know at work. But it's this idea of understanding who your neighbors are and who maybe your definition of neighbors should be. Sometimes in life we don't go into certain communities, and whether that's the local hospital or certain neighborhoods in your town that maybe you don't frequent, it's this idea of building bridges and breaking down barriers among people. And I think it makes a more rich fabric of life and more interesting life when you are understanding your community, expanding the definition of that, and really reaching out and building those relationships.
I love that. Okay, next.
And next would be the love of country. And, I've got to travel a good part of the world, and I realize that in America today, even though we're not perfect, we have won the historical lottery of all time to live where and when and how we do as U.S. citizens. In fact, tonight I leave for China, and I'll be in China for a week, and, we'll be going to all the major cities. And, yes, I'm interested in going to China, and there's interesting things about China, but it's nothing like the United States. And I really believe as citizens, we have to realize our role in that and to make sure that we keep this land free and to continue to create opportunity for many Americans and immigrants and a host of others.
Again, if you're just joining us, the 7 rings, a journey to a balanced life of peace, passion, and purpose. We've gone through number 1 ring, God, then a wife or spouse, kids, community, love of country, and number 6?
6 would be going out and looking at your place in the world. And in this chapter, we also talk about this idea of looking at even our environment, our physical environment. I believe that we should be good stewards of what we've been entrusted with, and whether it be the earth and taking care of that environment. And it's this idea of looking at more of a global basis and your place in the world. Each of us has certain experiences and and backgrounds, and we have a unique opportunity individually to show up in the world. And so I encourage people, no matter where they are, to look at giving of their time, their talents, or their treasure, and to realize that if they were to not get on the field of life, that they're leaving out an important part. And so be part of the team and reach out and expand your definition of that.
I love that, because I think a lot of people don't realize the impact they can have, and it can be so simple. And so many people think that it has to be so over the top and they have to be Bill Gates to make a difference. So the power of one, as I always say. All right. So number 7, Brian, seven is business?
7 is business, and it's the 7th and final ring for me. And, again, we've been fortunate as an entrepreneur to build a company and employ a lot of people, and we own assets in 17 states around America. But business is the 7th ring. And the reason it's the 7th ring is it helps to fuel all the other internal rings with financial resources. But it's also about priority. We work very hard at our business, and I care about our business and what we do. But at the same time, if our business was completely taken away, like it almost was in the 2008 economic crash, we don't define ourselves by what we have or by our business. We define ourselves by showing up in the world and loving and serving others and going through this thing called life together. But we don't solely define ourselves as it relates to business and what that means in our lives. All
right, the 7 rings, A Journey to a Balanced Life of Peace, Passion, and Purpose. You can find it on Amazon. And Brian Watson, your website?
It's brianwatson.us, and it also talks about all of our community initiatives. And we'd love to work with anyone, and just to really appreciate being on your show again today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. You're a real blessing to me as a friend and also the community.
Thank you so much, Angie. Keep up the good work, please.